Welcome back. This is the last segment, or is it the first segment? Either way, implementing a search-based site directory, the last bit of work that we're going to do is to finish building out the solution by adding query rules. The reason I made the joke that it could be the first is because this is a cycle that you go through for all of your content. And once you've built the query rules, your end users will start to get the idea that there's a lot more going on in the search center that you've created. And so your sort of the unintentional side effect of this is that you could quite possibly become a very popular person responsible for delivering additional search capability because now the users start to get it. They start to see what the power is that's built into SharePoint Online and SharePoint On-Prem that allow you to build out these amazing search solutions. And we'll demonstrate that by using some query rules. So what is a query rule? Well, it's a rule that I define as an administrator that runs when an end user runs a query. Yeah, clear as mud, right? Let me show you what I mean. Out of the box, there are a number of SharePoint query rules. So you can run this particular query in Office 365 or SharePoint 2013 or 2016 on premises. If after I was done with the presentation, you came up to me, you were interested in the PowerPoint presentation file that I used to show you what I was talking about, you might ask me, hey Matt, can I get that SharePoint PowerPoint presentation file? No, you wouldn't. You'd say, hey Matt, can I get your deck? Because that's what we call it. We call PowerPoint files decks. So in SharePoint, SharePoint knows that too. So if you type in whatever the word is and deck, SharePoint will automatically run a user intent query rule that says, find me all of the content that has SharePoint in it that is a PowerPoint presentation. And so here you see PowerPoint presentations for SharePoint. Likewise, there's a rule in there for Word documents because we just type doc and it does exactly the same thing. This is a user intent query rule. It says, I know what you're looking for. Let me help you. Now it does go ahead and run this query with the word doc associated with it. But right up here, it filters out the word doc. It removes that noise word and puts it to better use as a filter for just Word documents. And then down here at the bottom is a show more link that will show me more results that are just Word documents containing the word SharePoint. So we're going to take advantage of all of that and create a similar user intent rule. So if I come up here and search for Galaxy site, because I'm looking for the Galaxy Quest site, I happen to get that site at the top of my list, but I can guarantee you that later, if you did a more general search like project site, you might not get your SharePoint project sites from your project catalog. In this case, what's happening is there is a query rule out of the box that runs that is SharePoint sites for project. And you'll notice this is project sites, but they kind of look cruddy. So I want that to search my site catalog instead. And so if I go over to my site catalog link, I can see that I've got project sites here. This is the kind of result I want as a query rule. So let's fix that. Let's go to Site Settings. Let's go to Query Rules. And let's choose a result source like local SharePoint results, and then create a new query rule. So I'll give my rule a name. And here I'm going to look for a query that contains an action term. The action term I'm looking for is site or sites. Now I can specify additional conditions if I want, but in my case, I'm simply going to add a result block because I want that block to show up at the top of the page. The title for this is going to be Site catalog results. And then look at how cool the programming is for this. It tells me that I have some replacement options or query variables. The first one is the search box query, which is the original query. So that would be like project site. Then I have the subject term. That's the term that doesn't match my query or my action term. So that would be project. Then the action term matches. And look what they did. They're sneaky. That's the actual term that I typed in the previous dialog, site. So it's going to remove the action term if I only use the subject term. So I have a number of options for the query itself. If, for example, instead of searching everything on the site catalog item, if I only wanted to search the title, I could do that. I could come in here and say search the entire site catalog item. That's the result source that we previously created. If you haven't created your result source yet, jump back a couple of videos and we'll show you how to create that in a previous video. But just leaving it like this with subject term, if I test my query here, since I don't have a query specified, nothing comes back. So we go over to test, we choose show more, and here I can search for Galaxy. And it'll find my Galaxy Quest site. I can search for movie. And it'll find my movie site. Now I could also search for SharePoint. And since SharePoint is part of the URL for all of these sites, it's going to show me those sites. What if that's not what you wanted? What if you wanted to force it only to search the title? Well, you can do that. You can go back to basics. You can come down here and take out this subject term query text. Choose a specific property filter. Make sure that it contains the unmatched query terms and add that. Now if I go over and test, remember before I typed SharePoint, and because SharePoint was part of the URL, I got everything. I can now test that query and I get nothing. But if I search on project, I get my site. So if this is the site, if this is what you desire, then you can do it this way. It works really well. I love that. I'm going to keep it more generic. I'm going to keep it much more basic by leaving it at just subject terms. I want my query to be much more broad, so I'm going to leave it that way. Now, you get to choose what source to search, how many items to show. I'm just going to show 2, but you could show more if you wanted. And then under settings, you have some additional options like showing a more link. This would mean on the main tab, I'll show them 2 sites, and if they want to search the entire site catalog, I lure them over to my full result page. How do I get there? Well, I just do a search here. I go to my site catalog results page and I steal the URL. Okay, so I'm just going to steal that URL and I'm going to paste it right in here as a more link. Now there's a K equals. Leave that on there and take off the stuff at the end. And then grab search subject terms and drop it right there. Oops, we'll go ahead and leave it here as well. Oops, out of control. So our query for subject terms, we'll have a more link that'll take them to site catalog results. The last thing you have to decide is where do you want the result block to show? Now for my demos, I always choose the top one. That way the results always show at the top. But this bottom one has some very good functionality. And what it does is it allows more relevant results to be sorted above your result block. And that means that your result block may show up on page 3 or 4, which means that it might not show to the end user, but it means they're getting 3 or 4 pages of more relevant results. I hope that makes sense. Think of it kind of like Google ads versus Facebook ads. This top one is like Google ads. They always show at the top. This bottom one is like Facebook ads, and that's where you see some posts of funny cat videos and pictures of your friends' babies, and then you see an ad. and then you see some more posts of funny cat videos, and then you see an ad. So it's sort of intermingled in the results, and that's fine. For most production systems, I'm going to choose the top one simply because it's a demo, makes the demo easier. Okay, so here's our new site catalog intent rule. Now, before I go off and test it, I wanted to show you one other thing, and that's that you could go to the Search Center to test it, but when it comes to troubleshooting your results or troubleshooting your rules, they've built in a tester right here. So if I choose project site and I click the little filter button, SharePoint is going to run that rule against all the query rules, or run that query against all the query rules, and show me the results. Here are the 2 query rules that are going to run as a result of my query. So here's mine, and it says that the keyword is sites and site. The keyword is site and sites, and it's the query search box query is project site. But here's the subject term, project. Here's the action term, site. Remember, that's the one we're going to rule out. So right here is the results. It's going to show me a label that says site catalog results for project, and it's going to run a query of project against the SP content type equals site catalog item. Now it's also going to run the query against the sites rule, and you'll notice that they have this STS site or STS web, and it's not people. And if you can leave that enabled if you want, or you can disable it. And the way that you disable the rule is you just come in here and say make inactive. I only do that if they get in the way. And so let's go have a look and see if it gets in the way. So remember, we're looking for the title, Site Catalog Item. And so here are SharePoint sites for project, but here is my site catalog results. My query rule is running at the top of the page, which is where I want it. But I think I'm going to go ahead and disable this one because I don't like that those nasty looking results are showing up in there. But let's test the rest of mine. So I've got Project X-Ray, Project Alien, and I can do show more. And when I do show more, it takes me over to my site catalog page where I see just the word project. You'll notice it removed the word site. And I think that's kind of cool. We can do the same thing as before. We can come over here and search for movie site, and there's our up the movie. Okay, so this works really well. I love the way that this is going. Look, there's no more link because there's only one result that matches the query that we executed. If there were more than 2, we'd get a more link. And so all that automation is built in for us. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and go back to site settings, query rules, and I'm going to disable So what I can do is come down here and choose make inactive. That'll deactivate that rule and prevent it from getting in the way of my query. So now that we've got that done, we should be able to do something like and there we go. We're not seeing that other query rule run. We have our nice looking search result here for our project sites. And then again, when we click on show more, come on, there it is, show more, it should take us right over to our site catalog page. So that's one example of a query rule that we can use, a user intent query rule. I wanted to give you one other example of a query rule that we can use associated with our site catalog item. If you recall in previous videos, when we set up our site catalog item, we had this site classification term group. And we had 3 term sets: security level, site classification, and site department. Now, if let's say that site department was something that you wanted, that inside your organization was something people understood, like they knew human resources and finance and client services, and they understood that those terms really meant something, or that you had promoted the use of managed metadata to the point that this was ingrained in the company, and it was something that was common jargon. If that's the case, I have a great query rule for you. Remember that we're searching our site catalog, and the site catalog has managed metadata associated with it. So I can put in an asterisk, and this searches for everything in SharePoint. So when I get over to the site catalog page, I see that I've got some sites that are related to client services and some that are related to charity. So what if in my world, my customers, the people that are doing the searching, actually knew client services versus charity, so that they would know that those are the sites that they're looking for? Well, maybe they would come here to the Everything tab, and maybe they would type charity and be able to find the site. Now, that's funny. I didn't expect it to find that site so easily. So let's try client services. Okay, this is a better example, because here is client services, and where are my sites? They're not here. So I think that I can improve that. I think that I can make that better with a query rule. And now there's a very cool query rule that we can use. So I'm going to come back into Site Settings. And we'll go back into Query Rules. And again, I'm going to choose Local SharePoint Results and New Query Rule. Now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for people to use the managed metadata terms. Now the key here is that this is something that's common in your organization. Obviously, if you're creating managed metadata and nobody knows about it, no one's going to use this rule. But you got to go with me on this, because I think it's kind of cool. So I'm going to go sites by department. And in this case, I'm going to say that it is a query that matches a dictionary. Now, what's the dictionary? Well, in our case, it's not people names. I'm going to pull it in from the term store. So we'll go into site classification, and I'm going to choose site department. Now I'm going to add a result block, and the rest of this is going to look very similar to what we had before, but now I'm going to use a real specific query. So see here, I get the subject term ID, and I get the subject terms, the matched dictionary entry. So let's say site catalog results for the thing that they searched for. That's going to be the subject term. So that's going to be client services in this case. But I can use that term ID to go after the actual value that I want to get. So we'll launch our query builder. Now this is going to be a little bit more of a complicated query. So let me build it up for you piece by piece. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that we're querying the site catalog item result source. And if you haven't already created that, you can need to do that from a previous video. I still want to use my subject term, but I also want to make sure that I further filter my results on the item, the taxonomic item that they selected when they typed in their query. So here we go. If you recall previously, we configured the refinable string property 004 as our property for department. And since it's a single select, I can choose equals here. And then the value I'm looking for is the value of our subject term. Now, there are other properties that actually use the IDs. And if you were using the taxonomy IDs, which would be a real laser-focused query, then you could simply change this to use the term ID. In my case, I'm just going to use the terms. I'm going to add that as a property filter, and let me show you what happens just based on that. If I go to test this and choose Show More, and I put in charity, my query works. It finds the search demo site that has charity associated with it. The problem happens when I choose client services. It doesn't work. Now, I'll go back to my term store and I'll make sure, did I type it wrong? No, I didn't. It says client services. So there must be something wrong with my query. The thing that's wrong with my query is that if you look at the query itself, it says client services refinable string equals client services. So what I need to do is put quotes around this. So let's come back here and let's put quotes around that part of the query. And then let's actually get rid of this redundant client services bit. So now if I go back and do my test, make sure the one that worked before still works. Okay, we don't have a regression. And then let's try client services. And lo and behold, we get all the rest of the sites. So I'm liking this. This works really well for me. I'm going to choose OK. I'm going to leave that the way it is. We'll come back in here and we'll do this block is always shown above core results. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and configure that more link like we did before. I'm not going to worry about it right now. And I'm going to choose OK. Choose Save. And then let's go out to our site. So remember, charity, client services. So I type in charity because I know that that's a department in my company. I just want to see if there's a site. And bang, I get the same result I got before. So my query rule didn't run because I'm not seeing the bar that shows me the result block. And sometimes it does take a minute or two for the query rules to get compiled. All right, so we give it a chance to import the term store and our rule is working. So let's go ahead and try it for client services. And it works there as well. So like with the previous rule, if we wanted to, we could put a more link in here, but I just wanted to give you a couple of ideas of how you can sort of entice your users to start realizing that there's more to search than just type it in the text box and pray while you click the mouse. All right, so we've configured our initial build of implementing a search-based site directory. We've got the query rules in place. So we've identified the content types, we've created the properties, we've created the display templates and the search verticals and the result pages and the query rules. That's kind of the first pass at everything. In the next couple of sessions, I'm going to show you some of the little tweaks that you can do to make this work better for you. For example, I'll help you understand whether you should security trim your search results. And I'll show you what I mean in a future session. I'm also going to show you how to automate the deployment of this entire solution using something called the Patterns and Practices Site Templating Kit. Very cool technology from Microsoft and the community to create templated solutions around these types of site level deployments. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll get an alert when I get those new ones up. Look for those in the coming weeks. Thanks so much.